Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of ebooks.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was sparked by your interest in a blog post from DSMS Digital Shop titled Ebooks, Revolutionizing the Way We Read and Learn.
Okay.
And they seem pretty excited about the benefits of ebooks, and I have to admit, they make some compelling points, but we're here to go beyond the hype and really understand what's going on.
Absolutely. There's always more to the story than meets the eye.
Yeah.
Let's unpack those supposed advantages and see what holds up.
Perfect. So the blog post kicks things off by highlighting convenience and cost savings.
Okay.
They talk about carrying thousands of books on one device.
Right.
And potentially saving money compared to buying physical copies.
It's true that the initial appeal of ebooks is hard to deny.
Yeah,
Think about it. You're on a long flight or stuck waiting somewhere. Instead of lugging around a heavy book, you can access an entire library from a single lightweight device.
Right. And I can definitely attest to the convenience factor.
Oh, yeah.
I was once on a trip and realized I'd left my book at home.
Oh, no.
Thankfully, I had an ebook downloaded on my phone and saved the day.
It's those moments you really appreciate having options.
Yeah.
And the source points out that ebooks are often cheaper than their physical counterparts, especially if you're open to exploring free ebooks available online.
Okay, so point one for ebooks, convenience and affordability check out.
Right.
But this blog post goes beyond the basics. They also rave about customization and accessibility features.
Okay.
Things like adjustable text size, different fonts, and background colors.
And that's where things get interesting.
Yeah.
Those customization options aren't just about personal preference. They have real implications for accessibility. For people with visual impairments, the ability to adjust font size or background color can make reading possible where it might otherwise be difficult.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And the blog post also mentions converting ebooks to audiobooks.
Right.
This opens up reading to people who may not be able to enjoy traditional books due to visual impairments or other challenges.
Exactly. It expands the very definition of reading and allows more people to engage with literature.
Right.
So we're seeing how ebooks can broaden access in a few different ways already.
Now, the source also touches on a topic that's top of mind for a lot of people, the environment.
Okay.
They argue that ebooks are eco-friendly because they reduce paper consumption, ink usage, and shipping emissions.
It's tempting to see ebooks as a clear win for the environment.
Right.
However, it's important to consider the full picture. While ebooks do reduce paper consumption, we need to factor in the environmental costs associated with data storage and the production of digital devices.
Right. It's not a simple equation.
No.
There are trade-offs to consider. How do you weigh those competing factors?
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Yeah.
But it's a crucial conversation to have. As we increasingly rely on digital technologies, we need to be mindful of their environmental impact.
Absolutely. And speaking of those digital technologies, this blog post highlights some of the hidden benefits of ebooks.
Okay, like what?
Things like searchability,
Oh, yeah.
interactivity, and built-in dictionaries.
These features might seem like minor perks at first glance,
Right.
but they can actually be quite powerful. For example, imagine you're researching a complex topic and need to find specific information within a large text.
Yeah.
With an ebook, you can simply search for keywords and instantly locate the relevant sections.
Okay.
It can save a significant amount of time and effort.
Okay, that's a great example. I'm starting to see how ebooks offer a different kind of reading experience, not just a digital copy of a physical book.
Exactly. And that leads us to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
the broader impact of ebooks.
Let's dive into that. What are some of the larger implications that this blog post highlights?
Well, for starters, they argue that ebooks have increased the availability of books, especially older or niche titles that might be out of print or difficult to find otherwise.
That makes sense. I definitely come across some obscure titles online that I probably wouldn't have found in a traditional bookstore.
Right. This increased access to a wider range of books benefits readers of all types, from casual readers to researchers looking for specialized information.
And this also ties into their point about ebooks potentially benefiting underserved communities, right?
Yeah. Think about people in rural areas or with limited access to libraries.
Right.
Ebooks can provide them with a vast library of literature and educational resources that they wouldn't have access to otherwise.
Yeah.
It's about democratizing access to knowledge and information.
That's a really important point. It's about ensuring that everyone, regardless of their location or circumstances, has the opportunity to read and learn.
Absolutely. And then there's the impact on self-publishing.
Oh, right.
The blog post argues that ebooks have made it easier for writers to reach a wider audience without needing a traditional publisher.
So potentially more diverse voices and perspectives in literature.
Precisely. It's a potential game changer for the publishing industry, creating opportunities for authors who might have been overlooked by traditional gatekeepers.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to consider how this could reshape the literary landscape.
I'm curious, how has your own reading experience been shaped by ebooks?
Well, I have to admit, I was initially hesitant to embrace ebooks.
Oh, really?
I love the feel of a physical book in my hands, the smell of the paper, the turning of the pages.
I totally get that. There's definitely something special about the tactile experience of reading a physical book.
There is, but over time I've come to appreciate the convenience and accessibility of ebooks.
Yeah.
I travel frequently, and being able to carry my entire library with me is a game changer.
And the blog post does a great job of highlighting those advantages, but they don't really touch on any potential downsides, do they? It seems pretty focused on the positive aspects of ebooks.
You're right. It's important to acknowledge that there are potential drawbacks to ebooks that weren't mentioned in this source. Things like screen fatigue, device dependence, and the whole issue of digital rights management.
Okay, let's unpack those a bit.
Yeah.
What are some of the things people should be aware of when it comes to the potential downsides of ebooks?
Well, for starters, some people experience eye strain or headaches from reading on digital screens for extended periods. This is known as screen fatigue, and it's a valid concern for many people.
I can see how that would be an issue, especially if you're someone who spends a lot of time reading.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of device dependence.
Right.
What happens if your e-reader breaks, your battery dies, or you lose access to the internet? You're suddenly cut off from your entire library.
That's a good point. It's something to consider, especially if you rely heavily on ebooks for reading or research.
Right. And then there's digital rights management, or DRM.
Okay.
This is a system used to protect copyrighted material, but it can also limit how you can access, share, and even resell your ebooks.
It's definitely something to keep in mind when deciding to go digital with your reading material. So while this blog post paints a pretty rosy picture of ebooks, there are some potential downsides that are worth considering as well.
Absolutely. It's important to weigh both the benefits and the drawbacks before making a decision. Informed choices are always the best choices.
Well said. So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've explored the convenience, accessibility, environmental impact, and broader implications of ebooks. We've also touched on some of the potential downsides that are worth considering.
It's been a fascinating exploration so far, and I think it's clear that ebooks are more than just a passing fad.
Yeah.
They're here to stay, and they're going to continue to shape the future of reading.
I agree. But before we get too carried away with the future, let's take a moment to bring it back to the present.
Sounds good. What did you want to touch on?
Well, while this blog post was super informative and enthusiastic about ebooks, I couldn't help but notice that it focused almost exclusively on the positive aspects.
You're right. It's important to acknowledge that there are potential downsides to ebooks that weren't addressed in this source. For example, some people experience screen fatigue or eye strain from reading on digital devices.
Yeah, that's a real concern for many people. And then there's the issue of device dependence. What happens if your e-reader breaks or you run out of battery?
Right.
You're suddenly cut off from your entire library.
That's a valid point. It's something to consider, especially if you're someone who relies heavily on ebooks for reading or research.
And then there's the whole digital rights management issue, which can sometimes limit how you can access, share, and even resell your ebooks.
That's a big one. It's important to understand the terms and conditions associated with your ebooks and to be aware of the potential limitations on your ownership rights.
It's definitely something to keep in mind when making the decision to go digital with your reading material.
Absolutely. Informed choices are always the best choices, and that includes being aware of both the benefits and potential drawbacks of ebooks.
So it sounds like we're agreeing that ebooks have some clear advantages in terms of convenience and accessibility.
Right.
But they also come with some potential trade-offs that are worth thinking about.
Precisely, and that's where personal preference comes into play.
Yeah.
Some readers may prioritize the portability and affordability of ebooks, while others may prefer the tactile experience and permanence of physical books.
Right. It's not about declaring one format superior to the other.
Right.
It's about understanding the unique strengths and weaknesses of each format.
Exactly.
And making choices that align with your individual reading habits and values.
Exactly. Now, going back to the blog post, I was struck by their enthusiasm for the potential of ebooks to transform the publishing industry.
Oh, yeah, they really seemed excited about that. What were some of their key points?
Well, they highlighted the rise of self-publishing as a major disruptor in the industry, made possible in large part by the accessibility of ebook platforms.
That makes sense. It's much easier for authors to publish and distribute their work digitally, bypassing the traditional gatekeepers of publishing houses and literary agents.
Exactly. And this has created opportunities for a wider range of voices and perspectives to be heard. Authors who might have struggled to find a traditional publisher can now reach a global audience through ebook platforms.
That's exciting. It has the potential to democratize the publishing industry, making it more inclusive and diverse.
It does. Now, the blog post also touched on the potential of ebooks to bridge the digital divide.
Right. They argued that ebooks can provide access to books and educational resources for communities that might not have traditional libraries or bookstores readily available.
Exactly. Imagine a world where anyone, anywhere with an internet connection can access a vast library of knowledge and stories. That's the potential power of ebooks.
It's a powerful vision for sure, and it aligns with their point about ebooks potentially leveling the playing field in terms of educational opportunities.
Precisely, ebooks can provide students in under-resourced communities with access to the same educational materials as their peers in more affluent areas.
That's a game changer. It has the potential to empower individuals and communities through knowledge and education.
It does. And let's not forget about the potential for ebooks to enhance the learning experience itself. The blog post touched on this briefly.
Oh, yeah, they mentioned interactive features, multimedia content, and even things like data analytics to track reading habits and preferences.
Exactly. Imagine ebooks with embedded videos, interactive quizzes, and personalized recommendations based on your reading history.
That sounds pretty futuristic.
It does, doesn't it? And while some of these features are still in their early stages of development, the potential is there to create truly immersive and engaging learning experiences through ebooks.
It's fascinating to think about how these technologies could shape the future of education. We've gone from chalkboards and textbooks to interactive ebooks with multimedia content in just a few decades.
It's remarkable how quickly technology evolves, isn't it? And speaking of evolution, this conversation about the future of ebooks and education makes me think about the future of libraries.
Oh, interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, traditionally, libraries have been centers for physical books and printed materials.
Right.
But as we move further into the digital age, I think we'll see libraries evolving to become more like community hubs for digital literacy and access.
That makes sense. They could offer workshops and training programs on how to use ebooks, digital research tools, and other online resources.
Exactly. And they could also provide access to computers, high-speed internet, and other digital technologies that might not be readily available to everyone in the community.
It's like libraries are transitioning from being primarily repositories of physical books to becoming facilitators of digital knowledge and access.
Precisely. And I think that's a really exciting prospect. Libraries have always played a vital role in fostering literacy and community engagement, and this evolution will allow them to continue serving those purposes in a rapidly changing world.
I love that vision. It's about adapting to the needs of the community and ensuring that everyone has the tools and resources they need to thrive in the digital age.
Exactly. Now, as we wrap up this part of our deep dives, I think it's important to circle back something we touched on earlier, the importance of informed choice.
Right. We've discussed both the exciting possibilities and the potential drawbacks of ebooks.
And ultimately, the decision of whether or not to embrace ebooks is a personal one. There's no right or wrong answer.
It's about understanding your own reading habits, preferences, and values and making choices that align with those.
Exactly. Some readers may find that ebooks perfectly suit their lifestyle and reading needs, while others may prefer to stick with physical books, and that's perfectly fine.
There's room for both formats in the world of reading. What matters most is that people have access to the books and stories that enrich their lives regardless of the format.
Absolutely. And I think this blog post, while enthusiastically pro-ebook, has served as a valuable springboard for a more nuanced conversation about the evolving landscape of reading.
I agree. It sparked some important questions about the future of books, libraries, and education, and ultimately I think that's what a good deep dive is all about. Provoking thought, expanding perspectives, and encouraging a more informed and engaged approach to the world around us. So we've spent this deep dive exploring the world of ebooks, prompted by your interest in this blog post from DSMS Digital Shop.
Yeah.
They make a pretty compelling argument about all the advantages, but as we've discovered, it's not quite as simple as ebooks good, paper books bad.
Right.
What are your thoughts now?
It's clear that ebooks are more than just a digital replica of a physical book.
Yeah.
The technology allows for features and possibilities that simply don't exist with traditional books.
You're right. Think about the portability, having thousands of books at your fingertips no matter where you go, or the way you can customize the reading experience with adjustable fonts and text sizes.
Right.
Even switch to an audiobook if you prefer. That's a game changer for accessibility.
Absolutely. And when you factor in the potential environmental benefits, along with increased access to books for underserved communities and the rise of self-publishing, it paints a pretty optimistic picture of the role ebooks can play in shaping the future of reading.
But as we've discussed, there are also potential drawbacks to consider. Screen fatigue, device dependence, and digital rights management are all valid concerns.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as the biggest challenge?
I'd say the biggest challenge is striking a balance between embracing the advantages of ebooks while mitigating the potential downsides. It's about making informed choices and being mindful of the trade-offs involved.
Okay.
For example, you might love the convenience of ebooks for travel, but choose to read physical books at home to reduce screen time.
That's a great point. It's not an all-or-nothing situation. It's about finding what works best for you as a reader. And perhaps this blog post, while a bit one-sided, has prompted you to think more deeply about your own reading habits and preferences. What has resonated most with you throughout this deep dive?
Ultimately, this exploration has highlighted that ebooks are a powerful tool with the potential to revolutionize the way we read and learn. But like any tool, it's up to us to use it wisely and thoughtfully as you continue your journey with ebooks. I encourage you to stay curious, explore new possibilities, and most importantly, never stop reading.